Yo, what's good, y'all? Welcome to the John Katz Show, episode number 44. Being joined by a very special guest today via Skype, Mr. Kyle J. Maxwell. Kyle, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Kyle is an entrepreneur and a consultant and a philosopher and podcaster and martial artist, and what else? Kyle's one of these guys that makes me feel lazy. Let me put it that way.
The last credential is not quite there yet.
Martial artist?
Yeah. Do mixed martial arts for about 3 months. So I'm not gonna add that title. Not just yet. I suck.
I don't want to oversell you. And the little I've gotten to know you, what I see online, you're definitely one of these dudes that's always doing something, you know. Or in a good working out, doing some martial arts, reading. What's the secret there, man? I think everybody feels like they need more motivation, you know, or passion and that type of stuff. How do you keep yourself so active and disciplined?
I think I transmuted a certain trait about myself. I think it was I really started feeling that when I graduated, when I was in high school. For everyone that doesn't know, I'm a youngin', so I literally graduated like 6 years ago. When I started feeling that feeling when I was a senior, when I was, like maybe if you remember, you're kind of getting it's like summertime and you're about to graduate and you have half days all the time and you're making that you're literally making that transition from being a kid to like an adult, and now you're done with school. Now you have all this. You just get bombarded with this freedom,
right.
And that's a freedom that you've never really had before because you're always just so used to going to school, having that same routine.
It's scary.
Yeah, so it's like when you just get dumped out of this system you've been in for like 13 years. You just get bombarded with freedom. Like, what else am I supposed to do? Like, obviously, the typical kid parties until they're like blue in the face every single day. They drink, they do God knows what. And when I got out, I was just like you're just that guy. Like, what? Let's go do it. Whatever. I'm down. Whatever. I just had to do something. And I've always had that kind of like that anxious having to do something thing about myself. And I really started realizing I was like, I can never sit still. Like, I can just never sit still. And I didn't really start transmuting until about, I would say, 3 or 2 years ago when I started taking fitness seriously. I've been struggling with weight for a lot of my life. I've been obese, believe it or not. I have fat pictures that I'm still debating on showing the public.
You should. You got to show the motivation before and after for sure.
Yeah, so I kind of transmuted that kind of anxious, can never sit still energy and towards something productive. And I've always had that. I've always had to do something, but I don't want to conflate that with conscientiousness, the trait conscientiousness, because I took a personality test last summer, and I was in the 99th percentile of conscientious people, which means that I'm less conscientious than 99% of people. So basically, that test was saying that I was a lazy prick, pretty much. But the thing was, I essentially had the entrepreneurial makeup. So I was low in conscientiousness, but high in creativity, high in openness, low in neuroticism. So that's kind of like the entrepreneurial, I guess you would say, template. You think about it, entrepreneurs they're always doing like kind of like how we open the conversation. I'm always doing something. I can never really commit to one thing, so that it looks like I'm working hard. I mean, I understand the illusion there, but I'm really just at this my lack of low in orderliness. I was like 99th percentile in orderliness, so it's kind of like a unorganized, like just constant chaos.
So how do you focus all? Because I think that is the issue with a lot of people. They have a lot of energy. They kind of know what they're supposed to do, but like you say, it's the focusing that energy on the stuff that you should be doing, the stuff that the meaningful stuff can improve your life. how do you take that? And like you said, conscientious, it's a good, but how do you conscientiously focus all that stuff? I think most people I see struggle with that exact thing, and they're giving their energy to places where it doesn't belong, counterproductive.
Asking me this question is terrible because I don't. I think that's probably one of my flaws. I can't give like one thing my all. I've never ever been that person. I probably just like deleted like any potential woman that I've ever had like a future with just by that sentence. But I can never give like one thing like my all. I always have to be doing like multiple things. So I can never give one. I can never give. This is the con of being a jack of all trades. You can never give one thing. I'm never going to master one thing. That's just never going to happen. It's just my personality template. I'm just never going to do it. So the thing is, the only thing I can do is go 100 in that specific thing that I'm doing at that specific time.
Right.
Like I can never just like take 1 year. I'm only going to focus on jujitsu this year.
Right.
That's just never good. I can never do that. And I respect people that can do that. There's a colleague of mine in my class, mixed martial arts. That's like you're doing like 10 billion things. He only goes to judo. And I told him last night, I'm like, I respect you like so much that you have those. And maybe it's because, scheduling, everyone can't train every single day, but he only does judo. He doesn't do kickboxing. He doesn't come to jiu-jitsu. He doesn't come to nogi. He doesn't come to any other thing. He's just a judo guy. And I said I respect that because I can never do that. I can never just do one class.
So you do multiple disciplines, judo, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, kickboxing, boxing.
And you just got into this recently?
Yeah, 3 months ago, Muay Thai. So I kind of like I'm always doing multiple things. Same thing with business. I will never have my eyes on one business. I'm always doing multiple things. So I think that question, to answer your question, I think it's really about playing towards your strengths. Like if you're that person that just can't give one thing your all, then don't torture yourself with that. I would say do as much as you can. So if you're that type of guy that has to be doing multiple things, see how many things you can juggle.
Right. I think that is a better approach. Also, it seems like a lot of things interest you. I think a lot of people also struggle to even find things that they're into to begin with. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of people I see with all that energy, they're spending it in the wrong places. They're either sacrificing for other people, or they're always concerned with other folks. What are other people saying and doing? What are other people going to think about me when I do this? How did this person treat me, et cetera, et cetera. It's I think what you're kind of touching on, the key is like it's getting to know yourself and doing the stuff that you find interesting and just going for it, whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's philosophy, you name it.
That's an interesting point because especially in the field of psychology, I think, because the first stepping, like you can't really get, like some people like maybe intellectuals or like famous, like really, really, really big names in the philosophical, in the psychological industries. I agree with a lot. I don't agree with everything, mostly the behaviorists. Like I haven't read a lot of Skinner, but a lot of behaviorists who are like cut and dry psychologists who really believe that people are they just solely react to the outside stimuli. They don't believe it in free will. They don't believe in their science that are not grounded in I guess you would say, a ethical framework. That's what they kind of promote. So they don't believe that human beings have free will. They think we're just like soulless meat puppets and just reacting to outside stimuli, which is just completely wrong. Like many people, like that's just an undergrad at a university could probably prove that wrong. Someone who's well read, they can just easily prove that theory wrong. But to answer your point, I think that one of the stepping stones that I think many overlook And this is why I'm so excited. I don't know if you're familiar with John Vervaeke. He's a university professor at University of Toronto in Canada. He's a really, really brilliant. He's like got this guy's a genius. He's spoken to Jordan Peterson. He's spoken to John Pagel. A lot of those big Canadian. I'm going to speak to him next week on my podcast, which is amazing. He has this theory of relevance realization. So basically, and this is like the core of his work. This relevance realization. What draws our attention to things? Like what makes you want to do this podcast? Like what calls you forth to how do things become salient? How do things become noticeable to you? Like for instance, you and I are having a conversation. Now, during this conversation, your mind may drift. What am I going to eat tomorrow? What did that text mean from that girl? Why did she say that? Or did my dad really know who I am as a person? Do I speak? Am I doing my best? Your mind's gonna like wander like a million different places. What is keeping you focused? What is drawing you towards? Because you can be doing a million other things right now. You could be listening. You could be listening to the timbre of the sound of your microphone making. You could be listening to the crickets. You could be listening to anything else. You could listen to music. You could be counting how many syllables are in my words. You could be counting how many gestures I make. You could be trying to decipher how many hairs are on top of my head. You could be counting how many times the word the. All these things are present, but you're focused. You're canceling all the way out, and you're zoning in on one proximal thing. And this is a core of John Vervaeke's work. He wants to know, how in the hell do people do that? What is that?
Well, that's the free will part. That's the proof that we're not just prey to our external stimuli.
That blows up any like those type of hardcore theories, because you reach this is his term, combinatorial explosion. So what that is it's impossible to focus on everything. You cannot focus on everything. You have to zone in on one particular thing. And what the core of his work is, what is that? You can't, and this is where you get kind of choppy here, because it's like you're presupposing the problem kind of presupposes itself, because now we're focusing on why we're focusing on what we're focusing on. You just gotta you right. Reach this regress, and it's an amazing question, and this kind of ties with keeping your focus on one thing, or deciding on what you're going to do. And I think when you really self-reflect on yourself, and a good question to ask yourself is like, damn, like why are the things which are salient to me salient? Like, why do I notice that attractive woman walking down the street when I should be focusing on something that's probably more important than that? Like, why are these certain drives and these certain desires more potent than others? Like, who is in control here? What is going on?
No, I do think we are. It's not limitless, right? We were talking about before. I'm not going to be. People are just so vastly different. The way they're wired, the type of personalities people have, what gets people excited. I think people do kind of fall into the mistake of thinking that they are limitless, right? Look, I'm not going to be an NFL football player, right? And the things that interest me are not going to interest other people. I'm never going to be a guy who gets up at 7:00, and runs out the door and is going a million miles. Like, you look at someone like a Kevin Hart, right? Who's just nonstop, always on the move, always doing. Like, I feel like I enjoy sitting and watching a Netflix series too much. You know what I mean? Like, and even when it comes to like, so for this pod, for example, I've always, since I was little, I always felt like I want to talk or be on a microphone. When people ask me what I want to do as a little kid, I say I want to be, a sportscaster, like ESPN or something like that. I was never going to be a biochemist, right? But I think that's just wired into us. I think we are still operating, even though we have free will within that realm. I think we are kind of all operating within our own. Because that other kid, when he's walking and sees something, he gets excited by the fauna and the flora, or whatever you call it. He's going, man, I want to be a biologist. This stuff's amazing. I'm so. Other people go their whole life, they wouldn't even look at it with the slightest bit of interest.
Yeah, people like. I'm really not trying to like crap on Skinner here, but one of his well-known quotes is, it's basically something like people, if you take like a summary of his work, he's pretty much saying that people are products of their environments. And I have a friend, his name is David David Tuttle. David Tuttle? Yeah, David Tuttle. He he's a psychology major, a biological psychology major, and we had a great conversation on my podcast. And he's actually in school. I don't go to school. I'm not a certified anything. I just happen to know this stuff. But he quotes a lot of Skinner. He agrees with a lot of that, a lot of those theories that people are products of their environments, and what in your interests are merely maps of what you were around. So for instance, if you're interested in podcasts, if you're interested in I don't know, patriotism, I see American flag behind you. If you're interested in sports casting, that's because you're around an area that was primarily dictated or oriented towards sports, or oriented towards patriotism, or oriented towards people who are talking. Maybe your culture, maybe you're Italian, maybe people are just never shut up around you. Things like that. And on one hand, you can totally agree with that, because this is a abstract representation. So, for instance, you and I are both speaking the same language because we're obviously in America, and that's the predominant language we speak in America. So obviously, from an example like that, you can say we speak English because we're in an English speaking country. But I think it's all about how you want to frame this. Now you can say, because we both live in America, does that mean that we necessarily respect the Constitution, or have the same views, or have the same opinions about the Second Amendment? Not really. Now, what determines those personalities? Well, maybe your family is 75% veterans, and they hammered it in your head that this country matters, and you better put that flag up, or they're gonna beat you up. Whatever. Or my family could be extremely left, and they hate this country even though they're still living here. Who knows? But I think the more you zone in on these things, it's like you can have your own. If you play that out, if you play this mode of thinking out algorithmically, what you're saying is that we're not in control of anything. You and I are just. I mean, it sounds like a straw man.
That's why I don't subscribe to that idea at all. Even what you were saying with product of environment, I don't, we are limited what we can choose from our environment, but those things that are intrinsically in us, right? So you mentioned the podcast. So sure, based on what exists in modern society, I chose podcasting, right, as this venture. But for John Katz, as a 2-year-old, when I was born, it still derives from my wanting to communicate ideas, my wanting to have interesting conversations, ask people interesting questions. I mean, from the time I was a baby, that was me, Mr. Curiosity. I always needed to know why. I was always asking something. You bring up sports. So we have those sports to choose from in society, but still, I think that comes from, if I'm a sports fan, there's an intrinsic thing where I enjoy competition, or I enjoy seeing people perform at the highest level and do amazing physical things with their bodies, and et cetera, et cetera. So where do I take that energy? Oh, there's sports. Well, that satiates that impulse. Even something like patriotism, to me, that's still an intrinsic, like, I don't want the government in my fucking life. Like, that's my main. But I think people who want to kind of be left alone in life in general, people kind of fall politically to what their personality is, and they go, this kind of reflects who I am as a person. I want to be taken care of. I want someone to tell me what to do. I want this kind of structure. You'll find those people usually vote one way, and the people who are saying, hey, I want to be left alone, I want to make my own decisions for myself and my family, they're going to vote another way. But I think that impulse is wired in us. I don't even know. I mean, you can see siblings, even twins, from the same family, same environment, and they're just so vastly different politically, and their interests and everything else. Their DNA is identical and their environment's identical.
Yeah, there is a. I'm glad you brought that up. It's a good segue. There is a probably one of the best memes ever invented, and it's not funny or like humorous or anything. It represents life, period. So, and you probably seen it as well. There was it was a picture. It was two side by side visuals. In the first one, it was a guy and some other person, and the guy asked him. He said, "Why are you an alcoholic?" The other guy said, "Well, because my dad was an alcoholic." And the next one, the same person, same environment, same everything, same exact circumstances. And the guy said, how do you have all this? And he had like a nice car, he had like a good suit on, like everything was. He looked like he cared about his life, and he looked like he put some type of effort into changing his environments. And the person asked him, how do you have all this stuff? How do you have this car? How do you have all that? He said, because my dad was an alcoholic. And
such a good.
You can look at things like that and get real cynical and say, "Oh, well, that's like just conservative propaganda." Like that is actual life. Two people with the same exact circumstances. Those impediments can be impediments, or they can be the exact motivation you need to excel in life. Because people are always saying like, I understand why people hate or not hate. I can understand why people are upset with their suffering in the world. Who wants more suffering? Nobody. Like, who wants to see people starving and on the street and impoverished? No one wants to actually see that. And if you do, then there's something wrong with you. But let's just wait a second here, people. Imagine LeBron James if he grew up in the middle class suburbs and he had both parents and he went to a private school. What the hell will LeBron James be to that? We won't even know who that was. Who knows? We won't even know half of the people who are successful, who have built brands, who are phenomenal human beings. We probably wouldn't even know half of them if it was not for that adversity that they were faced with. Are you going to leave all that on the table and have this hypothetical utopia on Earth?
It's funny. I was thinking about that even before when you were talking about having, super lefty parents or super righty parents, because that could have both effects. You could have the kid who's like, yeah, rah, rah, mom and dad, I'm on board with all that stuff. And then you'll have the kid that's like, I want the complete opposite because I'm sick of having this bullshit drilled into my head every day. It's like the parents who don't let their kid ever drink or do anything wild. They're the ones that go nuts the minute they can, oftentimes. And then, the ones who they give them a little bit of leeway, they often end up being a little more responsible adult. You get it out of your system, you experience it. But yeah, I think that for most people, see, that's a very rare trait where you're talking about taking the adversity and then flipping it into success. Most people, I would say, allow things, if something terrible happens to you or you come from an abusive home and what have you, most people don't, use that as the fuel and are able to necessarily overcome it. Most people end up being plagued by that probably more negatively for most of their lives. And then you see those people that do excel and say, hey, I'm never going to feel that way again. I'm never going to be that way again. Those seem to be like the most special, rare type of people.
Yeah.
You seem to see the other way a lot more, right?
Yeah. And so you'll get that kind of argument that, well, you're just picking out a small strata of like hyper successful people, and you're saying that those barriers, you're undermining those barriers of, I guess, inequality, or you're undermining those barriers of single motherhood or whatever. They'll try to say that you're undermining that stuff, and I'm really not. I'm just making the point, and I think a lot of other people are just making the point that somebody in your exact situation, with your exact problems, with your exact circumstances, took those on their own volition and succeeded immensely in your same position. So no one's denying that you're not suffering. No one's denying that you are not dispossessed in some deep intrinsic way. I'm just making this is like the real punch. But they don't like. It's like, I'm just letting you know that this isn't it. That's not it.
I'm really glad you touched on that. I actually saw you talking about this in some of your videos, and it's something I talk about a lot too, which is like, it's the self-pity shit that really trips people up. It's the idea that life's not supposed to hurt, right?
Yeah.
It's the expectation of happy. I was just talking about this on a recent episode. The expectation of happiness fucks people up worse than anything. Because when something good happens, they take it for granted, right? But if they suffered or something bad happens, they want to just wallow in it. And people will do that their whole lives. And they'll say, this terrible thing happened to me. And it could be a very terrible thing. You could have lost your parents when you were a baby and a million other things, right? But people will kind of sit and go, I'm not supposed to feel that way. And they end up being more upset at the fact that something bad happened or that they're upset than at the actual thing itself, right?
Yeah.
They allow it to kind of become their identity and to consume. And a lot of people seem to want nowadays this new phenomenon. You never used to, people want to be part of like a victimhood group or an oppressed group. It's like, hey, please lump me into this group so I can identify as a victim also, or someone that's not had a fair shake in life. Whereas people used to kind of be ashamed of that and they'd want to identify the other way.
Because we want an adventure. Like, do you want to be like some like sterile, undefined, like amorphous blob of like flesh who's never been challenged or has no type of resistance against? Like, you almost don't feel reality until you hit that thing. It's like, oh shit, this thing's real. It's kind of like when you're dreaming, or if you're in a place where you're not too sure what's going on, and then you hear a sudden noise and then you stop. You get into that fight or flight. You're like, oh shit, like this is real. Like something actually happened and I can feel it, and I had this physiological response. Like I can actually feel this. I think some people that's like a archaic human response. We're not even in control of that fight or flight response, and that's something that is like ingrained to our DNA. And we're intrinsically driven towards negative emotion, and that makes sense because we're trying to not experience negative emotion. So that makes sense on the neurological front. We're wired towards negative emotion. So if you are experiencing a surplus of positive emotion, you're that sterile loser in like his like grandmother's basement. You want to experience something. You want a tragedy.
It should be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Jordan Peterson, right? He introduced me to the author Dostoevsky. I'm reading his book Crime and Punishment, and one of Dostoevsky's novels, I think it was The Brothers Karamazov, or it was Notes from Underground. It was one of Dostoevsky's like really great quotes, and Jordan Peterson quotes this one a lot, and it just blew my mind. It goes something like, douse them with everything you want. Douse people with economic security. Give them endless pleasures. Give people everything they want. And he said, out of pure spite, man will play you some nasty trick. He will turn in everything that he gained. He will sacrifice everything that he wanted. And he wrote this like in the 19th century, when those in Russia, when those socialistic, like egalitarian doctrines were starting to bubble up. Like he was like light years ahead of the revolution before the socialist communist revolution. So he was like light years ahead of this stuff, and Nietzsche was ahead of it too. He was saying, so basically he was looking at this from the far, like, okay, go ahead, give people everything, give people everything they want, take away suffering. What you're gonna get you're gonna get exactly what you're trying to hypothetically remove. You're guaranteed to bring hell on earth when you try to bring heaven. Like it's guaranteed.
Well, and just at a very base level, at the core, those people aren't actually happy anyway. You know, that amorphous blob you describe in his mom's basement, who's just, you know, hitting the bong and playing video games and stuff, which, you know, we all like to do sometimes.
Occasional.
He's not actually happy, right? He's more miserable than fucking anybody. He may not be putting himself into scary, uncomfortable situations, but he's certainly less happy. And like you were saying, it's the discomfort. It's the worst things that happen to us that we grow from also. You know, any lessons that you really learn in life, whenever you really, you never sit back and really analyze yourself and do all that self-growth stuff when you're comfortable. And all the meaningful stuff does come from scary situations.
That was a really great point. There's no need. The need for self-reflection is irrelevant in a world with no danger. And if there's a world with no, and I think this is crazy. You just brought me to this point. I was thinking about Adam and Eve the other day. I got hit with this epiphany about Adam and Eve, the story, and why they were in this garden, this walled garden of paradise. Why and why they were presented with this tree of good and this tree of knowledge. That word knowledge is very, very peculiar. So if you take apart the word knowledge, knowledge comes from the Greek word gnosis, which is basically just knowing things, just facts. Like you're wearing a hat, you have a shirt on, that's a microphone. I'm a human being. This is a protein shake. Facts. Facts are neutral. Is this a protein shake inherently good or bad? It's good if I want to drink it, but it's bad if I want to use this to throw it at your face. So facts in general are neutral. So you can look at that tree as the tree of neutrality. It's just there. It's a tree. It's just a tree of knowledge. And when they were presented with this tree of knowledge, and then when they were told not to eat from this fruit, not to eat from the tree, so they were presented. They were going to be presented with something that they were not ready for. So I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, why were they not meant to be exposed to the knowledge of good and evil before they were made conscious or had their eyes open? And why was the serpent encouraging them to obtain this knowledge from this tree? Because you would think that if you knew the difference between good and evil, that you would just know good in a platonic sense, and you would just know evil, and you just wouldn't do the bad stuff. Well, it turns out human beings are a lot more complex than that. You would think that. Well, if I knew this was really, really bad, if I knew this was really, really good, then obviously I would do the really, really good thing, right? Dead wrong. Because if you think about it, this is like in the most basic sense. Okay, it's really basic. Why do you eat Oreos and stuff? Why do you eat chips and why do you not you specifically, but why do you?
No, I eat a ton of shit. Yeah, no.
Yeah, why do you eat ice cream? Why do you eat fructose? Why do you eat high fructose corn syrup? Why do you eat too many carbs? You know what it's doing. Why are you smoking cigarettes? Why are you smoking weed? Why are you doing drugs?
Weed's not bad for you.
Why are you not sleeping 8 to 9 hours a night?
Speaking of Jordan Peterson, he always said, treat yourself like you would someone you're in charge of taking care of. You wouldn't do that with someone else. If someone said, here's this kid, I need you to take care of him, make sure he's healthy, you wouldn't wake him up and feed him Oreos and cigarettes.
Yeah.
But we do it to ourselves.
So I was questioning him, like, okay, so it made sense, and just a gigantic epiphany. Knowing the differences between good and evil are not enough. That's not enough, because those are just facts. God was telling them, if you don't believe in God, just say the ultimate good. The ultimate is more than good. The logos itself, the thing that unites and makes, the thing that created evil. You can think about it like that, because God did let evil exist. The thing that allows evil to exist. Knowing the difference between good and evil in and of itself isn't even a moral act. You have to be embedded in a transcendent value that exceeds good and evil. Because you and I, us human beings, we know what's good, we know what's bad. But those two things of themselves are just facts. This is something that David Hume pointed out. You can't derive the ought from the is. That's one of the naturalistic fallacy. This is one of the hallmark in philosophy. You cannot derive these values from the facts. So the fact is that it's not really a fact, but the fact is that this is something that is objectively bad. This is something that's objectively good. Even from this, you cannot derive what you should do until you are aligned with, or until you are aligned with what is transcendent above what is just merely good or bad. And I think that's why God was saying, don't eat from this tree of knowledge, because you're seeking to know things, that gnosis, you're seeking to know things before you know why they are there in the first place. You're seeking that narcissism. You're seeking this information. You're it's not driven by that agape. That's one of the another Greek word. That's more something more than love. The love of agape would be not like I love you in like a romantic sense, but I genuinely want what's best for John. Like I want what's best for you. That's that agape love.
It's the real. That's the real kind of love,
Yeah,
the selfless
you're
kind.
questing like me. This is a good example. Like me just coming on this podcast right now. What was driving me? This is back to motivations and wants and interests. What was me coming on this podcast and talking to you? What's really going on here? Am I just coming on here to just make an elevator pitch for a business? Am I coming on here to talk over you and not care about what John has to say? Like, what am I doing? Am I coming on here just to get what? Let's say if you interviewed X, Y, and Z, well, what if I'm just coming on your podcast just so I can ask you to reach out to someone else? Like, what is driving?
It's the intent. Intent really is everything.
And the serpent, the thing that is below that operating on the if you're not comfortable with religious terms, the serpent, you can think about bad evil, the thing that is operating on the most lowest possible ebb ever. That's what the serpent is. And literally, because the serpent it can't, by definition, the serpent, a reptile, is on the ground. That's a slither. It's not high. A snake can never have a view of an eagle or a giraffe or anything. It's by definition operating on the lowest ebb on the ground. It has to swim. It has to be in dry and lifeless places. It's by definition something that's operating on a low level.
So, well, don't we need that contrast to exist even for the? So without the evil, nothing would seem good, right? Or without, if pain didn't exist, right? Well, there couldn't even be pleasure, right? There'd be nothing to compare or contrast that against.
And it's those combating, it's that dynamic relationship that is what's most important, and that's what Adam and Eve didn't understand. Knowing good and evil is not enough. You have to be enlightened to the union of those two things. Once you have the knowledge of the union between those two things, then you can use that and say, oh crap, well, this is bad, this is good. Because just that outside, we're going back to the behavior stuff. Just knowing it just doesn't work. Because sometimes let's take this conversation really, really deep. Not really deep, really, really dark. Some people are oriented towards what's dark and what's evil. Some people wake up in the morning and like, yeah, we're gonna go cause hell today. You wanna come? We're consciously planning to go cause the most evil we possibly can. We could easily go kill someone as easily we could go help an old lady across the street. That's that free will. That's that ability to pick. It's not enough. If it wasn't, we wouldn't need anything else. If we just knew, but knowing, gnosis, is not enough. It has to be embodied in that spirit first, that can decipher, that can. I don't see an argument around the free will thing.
No, I don't either, and I completely agree with it. And I think, I mean, look, what we know of science now with the chemical, look, there's some legit sociopaths out there, right? People literally born without empathy and those types of things, and I don't think they can be fixed necessarily. But I hate when people make exceptions, so I'm sorry to do it there. There's always exceptions, but yeah, generally speaking, I would say most people, from my experience in life, that act out, I don't even know if I want to use the term evil in this context, but people that do bad things to other people and misbehave and hurt people or steal from people and break law, they're often in more pain than anybody. That's the consistent theme. And I've known some of these like career criminal types, that are always, they just can't get out of their own way and they're always doing something wrong. They're always relapsing. It's like those people are always in pain and they don't know how to process it, and they're just lashing. They blame the world. They're angry. They're lashing out at everybody else. Intent is huge for me. It always has been. And I I feel like I'm pretty good at picking up people's energy too. You know, a lot of people are just strictly results oriented. What did you do? What are you doing for? I just want to see results. They don't care if you were the biggest dick in the world to get those results or if you were the nicest guy in the world. But I do. And if somebody fucks up, it matters to me if they were intentionally trying to sabotage something or if their heart was in the right place and they just made a mistake. And a million degrees in between. But I always try to look at what is somebody's underlying intent. Where is their heart at? Are they acting this way because they're in pain and they feel like they've been victimized and they're you know, it's manifesting in this unhealthy, weird way? Or are they really a bad dude with an evil core and they want to see people suffer? There are a lot of people like that. They want to bring you down to their level. If I'm suffering, I want you to suffer too.
You use that word heart. That's another verse that stick with me. I don't remember the exact place, but it's something like, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. It's the intent. Because you can get really that's why I kind of hate debates. I've been labeled as someone who likes debating.
You like communicating ideas. It's a different thing. People think I'm a huge debater, and I you know, maybe with my friends and family I don't give up a point too easily, but yeah, you like to communicate. You know what it is too? And this touches on what we were just talking about. This is like the biggest thing I feel like is plaguing society. One of them, there's a lot of them, is that people don't look to other people for strength and inspiration. They look at them now with resentment, bitterness. You see somebody succeeding, you should look at that and go, wow, that's amazing. It should make you happy to see other people do well, right? And you should be inspired by that. But it feels like the majority of people kind of have the opposite. Fuck that asshole. Why does he get to do that? It's like, maybe look at what he did. Look at the steps he took. Or in general, you should just kind of naturally find that, you know, to be a positive thing, not a negative thing. And that seems to be getting worse in society.
And two things. So I think that's sound, because that's our innate nature to imitate. So I'll agree with that. Secondly, I think that's why idolatry is not ideal, because once you elevate a human being, any human being, above the category of, let's say, he's beyond the pale of, we have conceptualized this human being as something superior to human being. So for instance, when you think of someone like LeBron James or someone like Mike Tyson or even Michelangelo, these guys were human beings. He bled, he used the bathroom like us, he probably got sick, he had to eat. He had these basic human qualities about him that we blind ourselves to because they're just so goddamn productive and amazing. So I think, once we elevate that person beyond a human being, he becomes a symbol, something that Carl Jung talked about a lot in his book Psychological Types. And he has this great book called Man and His Symbols. I need to get that book. I haven't read it yet.
How much do you read?
You mean like a day or?
No, just in general. Like how many you read? A couple books of mine. It sounds like you read a lot. I need to read more. Been a long time.
I used to, you know what's funny, Don? I used to hate reading, like 2 years ago, because this was before I transmuted that I had to be doing something, and reading runs completely contrary to my nature. Because when you're reading, first of all, you're sitting in one spot. You should watch me while I'm trying to read the book.
You don't do audiobooks? You're reading the real McCoy?
I won't do audiobooks, but I will definitely watch YouTube lectures. I can't do audiobooks. That's just because my mind just wanders too much. I have to be visually stimulated, or I have to be consciously torturing myself.
They also have to have the right voice. A lot of those, because I'll do the audiobooks because I am lazy like that.
Yeah.
And
if it was your voice, if you wanna record a book, I don't know if you have a lot of time on your hands. If you want to do that, I'll listen to it if it was your voice.
I've thought about doing audiobooks for people. No. It's got. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, we were getting to something important. You were saying how people have this real cynical attitude towards people who
they're resentful.
Yeah, because this is what's so crazy. Like everything connects. Like I think people like you and I who who are embodied in that unison, like we know what's going on. We're not confused about. I mean, we're confused. Don't get me wrong. We're not like omniscient. Like we have our confusion about things, but we have that discernment to be like, that guy's full of shit, and that's so like there's no greater gift than that, man.
I just said the other
And
day,
it's not being cynical. It's like
it's intuition. It's emotional intelligence. I was saying the other day that true intuition is such a rare trait. And
yeah.
I told the whole story. I won't tell it again about this crazy dude I met, but he was intuitive as fuck. When people are intuitive with me, it impresses me because I don't think I'm that easy to read in a quick exchange. And if somebody can accurately, it doesn't, because I feel like I do it with other people, not to toot my own horn, but it's emotional intelligence is very rare, having a high level of it, and everybody's kind of got different degrees. A lot of people don't really give a shit, right? And maybe if they focused it, I'm very hyper aware of what's going on. I'm very hyper vigilant. Some of that maybe does come from having my own, we were talking about fight or fight. I've dealt with a lot of that weird stuff my whole life too, but yeah, I'm naturally very aware of what's going on, and I pick up on people's energy very easily. And you don't see that a lot. And I think the easiest people to communicate, the easiest people to be in a room with, right? They're kind of letting everybody be themselves, right? They're not imposing their own. A lot of people are just stuck in one mode, right? Yeah. They're not aware of this is happening here. This guy acts like this. He's doing it they're not thinking about that. They're just in their own weird little motor lane. Like everyone else is stuck in their weird middle lane, and they can't get out of it. And they're just always hammering everyone else over the head with it. And it seems like the most emotionally intelligent people are the easiest ones to talk to, the easiest ones to be around. They're very disarming because they're kind of comfortable in their own skin. They know who they are. The self-awareness is huge.
I would say discernment and self-awareness over the emotional intelligence. I think it's more self-awareness.
But isn't that the same thing? I mean, when you get to know yourself, you're more emotionally intelligent. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I doing this thing? What's inside of me that's causing me to act out in this way or do this detrimental? People don't get to. I find most people, not to sound like here's a book, Holden Caulfield or whatever his name was, I find most people very phony and inauthentic. Now, I think there's a couple things happening there. One, people are not self-aware. They don't even know themselves well enough to be authentic if they wanted to, and that's why it comes off that way. And then two, they kind of do know themselves, but they're just so worried about what everyone's going to think if they acted in an authentic way.
Yeah, I think you answered your question there when you said what's the difference between emotional intelligence and self-awareness, but you said that most people don't even self-reflect, so I have no reason to self-reflect on myself and see where my strengths or weaknesses are. I don't have the necessity to do that. And when you don't have the necessity to do that, when you haven't, in the Jungian sense, you haven't confronted your shadow, you haven't looked at those ambiguous, like murky parts of yourself that you're not even aware of. Like you haven't even looked at that. And some people do what's even worse. They'll do a shadow projection. So everything that is effed up about me, I'm just going, well, actually, John is the one who triggered those things out of me. And I think the difference, what answered your question, what's the difference between that emotional intelligence and that self-awareness is once you look at those terrible things that once you don't do it until you actually done it, until your hands are covered in the blood. It's like, holy crap, this is what I'm capable of doing. You have that self-awareness, and you could say it's emotional intelligence. You have that awareness of, oh, this is who I really am. Holy crap. Once you have enough people in a room who know what they can freaking do, it's like everybody is watching their step. If you're surrounded by a bunch of frantic, anxious, like it's freaks who have no idea what they're capable of doing, but the second something, like a loud noise, the second some type of unknown thing happens, they're gonna go completely. What happened for the last 2 years during COVID? That's
Right.
exactly what that was. A bunch of unchecked people
Right.
who have never had to look at the blood in their own hands. Something happened, some outside trigger happened, and nobody knew what to do. So what does a bunch of people who don't know what to do in a situation like that?
I think emotional intelligence you are mostly born with, right? And the self-awareness stuff I think people can work on.
Yeah.
As the emotional IQ relates to other people, I think is the part that I don't know how much people can work on that. Some people are just kind of oblivious to what's going on with other people, and I don't know that they can improve it. They can certainly get to know themselves better. I don't know that they can ever improve their ability to understand the psychology of other people or what's making other people tick. Sometimes you'll watch a show or a movie with somebody and they're just they get it. They know what's making this character. They're pointing out subtle underlying things. Oh, he must be feel. And other people are just kind of blase blah going through it, just pure entertainment value. They're not even thinking that deeply on that level. You brought up something. I always think about hurricane. I'm down in South Florida, and we have a lot of hurricanes. I haven't had a direct hit down here in several years, thankfully. But we've been through enough. I had lost power for 2-3 weeks, a couple times, a week, 2 weeks. But I guess that's my point, and I see that a lot when these storms come and they hit places that don't normally get hit, or people who are new to this state when they hit down here. What you were talking about, people spazzing out with the pandemic or being in the room, something happens. Yeah, you have to kind of go through something and learn from it, because I can tell you when the hurricanes are coming, we natives that have been down here forever, I hate calling myself Florida. I grew up in Virginia, but it's no big deal. It's like everyone knows what to do. We're all chilling. We're not rushing to load it. We get our water, we get our supplies. We're good. Everyone knows. But they hit other places. People freak out. My power's out. I mean, listen, you knock the power out for 2 weeks in Baltimore, watch what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But do it in South Dade County, Miami. Everyone's like, well, we're used to this. We've been through 10 other ones of these. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
They've been through those emotions.
Two people can react completely contradictory towards the same stimuli. That's the first thing we talked about.
Exactly.
And that's very important, because to people like you who are like, power outage, like what the heck? Like sometimes you probably even look forward to that. I mean, who knows? I mean,
I found it very peaceful.
Yeah, it's like you're not a slave towards your surroundings. You have that grounded instinct. I know what to do. We know how to act. We have this, and it's not even like it's not like when you're faced with that danger, like you're presentable, like you guys all have like some type of like manual that you refer to or anything. It's something that's very instinctual. Something that's been you've done it enough. You've done this physical activity enough where you've embodied it. It's like you are someone who knows what to do if shit goes left. There's like, and someone who doesn't have that, it's like a power outage for you, a power outage for me. Maybe I would freak out. I don't know, we don't really get that much in Maryland, but it's like if you don't have that calmness, that leadership, that instinctual grounding when the water's, it's like you're gonna. I just can't even imagine how someone is, and that's something I've learned just doing martial arts for 3 months. Because one of the things that you're learning how to do, you might think that, you might see a video of someone getting like Sparta kicked. You're like, oh shit, I don't want to do that. It's like, but the real thing you're learning is, and Joe Rogan said this perfectly, you learn jujitsu so you don't have to fight. That's why you're learning martial arts, so you don't have to be in those situations. So if I'm not saying I know, but I'm saying when you learn these techniques and you learn these moves, you're learning. Because if someone like comes up, I don't know how experienced you are, someone comes behind the average Joe Schmo on the street with a rear naked choke, a person like, I don't know what the hell to do. They're gonna fling their hands up. They're gonna go straight amygdala. They're just gonna freak out. They're not gonna know what to do. Right. If you go towards that black belt, well, I hope you have that choke in tight. You're just dead. You're learning what to do. You know what to do.
Well, and Rogan's talked about too. You're learning to be calm. In those situations, you have some heavy guy laying on you with all his weight. You're learning to not freak the fuck out because you
Yeah.
felt that. I always talk about that in relation to a lot of these, obviously anytime the cops kill somebody who is unarmed or what have you, it's, it's huge national story. It's a lot of these cases, a lot of these videos, the one with the drive-through with that drunk guy in the drive-through. I mean, you got 3 guys flailing around and you could have subdued this dude in 10 seconds. And they're all and I'm going, how are we putting people out there with guns in their hands? Forget race or anything else. I don't even factor. How are we putting these guys out there and asking them to confront violent criminals with guns? And they don't even understand basic body position, basic hip control, like shit you would learn probably in the first month. And one guy's grabbing his ankle, one guy's grabbing his arm. They're all flopping around, and the dude gets up, steals the it's like, you should have never been in that situation. It's more even than the training. It's that calmness you were talking about, that these guys have not been through high stress situations, and they get put in them for maybe the first time, and it's real life. It ain't practice. It's real life. And now somebody gets killed because you freaked the fuck out.
And you know what else is cool? When we were talking about, to go back to what we were saying about being cynical as far as people who are achieving, like excelling in the social triangle, that are getting up there. Once you have that discernment, that sort of awareness in yourself, once you're grounded in truth, you're grounded in the principle that unites all this stuff. So we're not of the world. We're not worldly people. I don't know about you, but we're not worldly people. We're not. Once you have that calmness, that state of mind, you're not, like you said, like, a bunch of people who are like, those people are not, I hate using the word happy, but those people are not fulfilled.
Right.
Like that stimuli, once I see someone who maybe has like a big, like gigantic Cuban link, and he has like all this money, he has like this like really fancy car. Once you have that kind of discernment, and we can have that, like that third eye, we can see through that superficiality. We can see through it. So we're not going to be cynical. We're not going to be jealous. It acts as like a superpower. Like, we're not going to get jealous of seeing that.
If it's something I want, I'll be inspired by it.
We're seeing it for what it is. Yeah. And if you're not, and this is why, because you and I we have seen those traits in ourselves. You and I have seen when we can get too cocky or when we can get too arrogant. We've identified that trait within ourselves, so we can see. And it's another thing from the Adam and Eve story that Jordan pointed out, because once they knew the differences between good and evil, they knew. Once I know, like, this is one of his interpretations. Once I know what hurts me, then I know exactly how I can hurt you. So once we are presented with that shadow, we're presented with these things. We're like, oh, that guy, he has a bunch of nice clothes. He's showing it off too much. I know what that is. I can see beyond the mere material. I can see what that really is. Someone who doesn't have those tools, they're like, oh dang, that guy has all that money. He has that nice car. He has all this stuff. It's like, well, then you don't know. You're just so clueless. You're like, well, he had to have done something bad to get that. He doesn't deserve it. And then you start cutting all these conspiracies about it. And now this person, you're elevating the person beyond a human being. You and I just see a guy with stuff. Does not entertain. What that person's looking at a god, someone who is not grounded. He's literally looking at God.
Well, and also, if it's, look, I don't care how much money I have. I'm never going to wear fancy jewelry. I'm never going to buy fancy suits. That's just not me. However, there is stuff I want in life, right? If you are a guy that wants fancy jewelry and clothes and cars, and you see, right, but if you see the guy that has it, you should be going, hey man, what did you like? That should inspire you. If it's something you really want, you should go, well, shit, this guy, he's, like you said, he's not a superhero. He's a regular guy, just like I'm a regular guy. He was able to get this Bentley and Rolex. Yeah, you said that inspires me to get the Bentley and Rolex. Instead, they're going, fuck this rich asshole. How come he gets to have this Bentley? Like you said, he must have done something wrong. He must have inherited money from his rich grandpa, anything. any excuse to be like, well, I can't get that too. But the healthiest people do get inspired by it. I think they used to. That's a shift. I feel like when I was younger, people they didn't look at rich, successful people as a pejorative. It became this negative connotation around it. People used to kind of look at it and go like, I want to be like that too, if in fact that's what they want. I did want to ask you, it's kind of what we're talking about. I've seen you talk a lot about extrovert, introvert, and the difference there, and how do you see the distinction there, and how is that applicable?
This is something that I think I'm beginning to actually specialize in these two differences. It's something that has really just blown my mind away. It's right here. This is for those who probably don't know, this is the book that the words introverted and extroverted came from. Carl Jung, Psychological Types.
Him, I know.
And I'm still in the works. I'm not like an expert on this or anything, but from what I've seen, from what I've read, I think the entire world has those. They have no idea what those two things are, what those two traits are, and if they do, they're completely backward. So, for instance, when I was talking to you and I was kind of like dissecting you, just listening to you talk, you are definitely. This is probably gonna surprise you, but you're definitely an extrovert. I'm going to explain to you why.
Oh, fucking why? I'll explain the after why I'm not, but go ahead.
I'm going to explain to you why. This is going to blow your mind.
Okay, I can't wait.
So let me frame it this way. I think what happened was a lot of, and this is something that not just in psychoanalytic, but a lot of philosophy too. Like, for instance, people think that Nietzsche was a nihilist. Like, just completely, people think the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche thought that there was no meaning to life. This is if you're well read, you look at that as like, are you stupid? Like, that could not be completely farther from the truth. And sometimes when these great thinkers, their ideas get hijacked by slightly less smart thinkers, and then they interpret their work, and then even slightly less smarter thinkers interpret those slightly less smarter thinkers, and eventually what you have is like this diluted theory that everybody can understand, everybody can get it. It's this watered down bullshit. And I think that's exactly what happened with a lot of Jung's work. It's exactly what happened with a lot of Nietzsche's work. A lot of thinkers' work, and we're going to explain this why.
I'm still waiting to hear why I'm an extrovert.
Yeah, I'm getting to it.
But existentialism is not nihilism for sure. And
yeah, this is the foreplay here. I'm getting towards that. So what drove Jung to understand and even drum up these terms, intro and extrovert, this is like the big takeaway here. He was making a cognitive. I think Carl Jung is going to be. I'm probably going to get like lambasted for this. I think Carl Jung was probably one of the first cognitive scientists that ever existed. Before cognitive science really took off in like the 1960s, I think Jung was probably the first. He was like on the frontier of cognitive science. Like he was making cognitive points when he was describing the differences between intro and extroverts, because what was the motivating these ideas, and he was using different examples. He was using two figures in history. So, for example, the first example, he was making a historical analysis of how two people in the same situation reacted towards an outside stimuli differently. So, for instance, he used Martin Luther, who was one of the a leading theologian before the Reformation. He was using Martin Luther, and the other guy's name I always forget. He was dissecting both of their theories. They were both theologians. They were both people enshrined in this religious way of thinking, and he was analyzing why the notes they wrote, the lectures they said, the things they said, the things that they did. Why were these two people who were in these same exact situations did something different? What was happening there? And something that he identified Martin Luther as the introvert, even though he was a Christian, and Christianity is inherently extroverted, but he was identified in Martin Luther as the introvert. So one of the definitions, you don't want to, and it's not like people are like, you're introvert, you're extrovert, you're introverted. You can be leaning towards, it's not determined.
Yeah, there's always a million shades of anything in between.
And I hope ambivert shit is stupid. I don't want to hear him even say that word. But you can be operating You can be cognitively introverted and socially extroverted. You can be that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain why. It's not like...
No, I get
like,
that. Absolutely.
yeah.
I would say I'm kind of the opposite, cognitively extroverted and socially introverted.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was. Literally, you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what. Great job, John. But what he identified Martin Luther as the introvert, because this is when it's gonna take me a long time to explain all this. Basically, Catholicism was birthing out during the Reformation, where all these different denominations were starting to emerge, like Catholicism and Protestantism and all this. This is when all these different denominations were starting, and the idea of communion. So, the bread, the wine, and I don't know if you're like even into all that stuff.
I'm a Jew, so I've never done any of that.
One of the discrepancies that were occurring in these churches was, how are we going to conduct this, this idea of communion? Is this going to be an actual thing? Like this blood is the blood of Christ, and this chip is like, this is the actual thing, we're doing this. Or is it going to be like a church ceremony in which we do this to kind of show our respect towards Christianity? This is one of the debating things, and what Martin Luther argued for was like, no, we are going to do this the proper way. This is not a representation of the blood. This is not a model of it. This is actual blood, and we're actually going to do this the proper way. He was romantically drawn, this romanticism, I'm going to get to that in a minute. He was romantically drawn towards the object, and what the introvert is, the introverted person is blinded towards the objects. They're oriented towards objects. That's why introverted people will go to a damn museum by themselves, stare at a piece of artwork for 45 hours, and just stare at it for themselves, because they are thinking about that object. This is why I said it's a cognitive point, because this is about subjects, us, and objects. This is about the relationships between how these things interact. He was romantically, what introverts do is and it's inherently, you could say it's probably narcissistic what they kind of do, if you take it towards the extreme. What romanticism is, and what drove the German romanticism, what eventually led towards the little Nazi thing that happened a couple of years ago, was that it was a result of that Germanic, was Hitler's not Lebensraum, that's a song by Liz. His Leben something. It's called his living space. So basically, Hitler thought of Germany as his thing.
Right.
This is my blank slate, and I'm going to use this for my own thing. He thought of it very romantically. He was oriented towards the object. Everything. People are puppets to the introvert. You strip the object of its intrinsic value, and you pretty much impose yourself on that object. That's what introverts do.
You're internalizing it.
Yeah, introverts are. Yeah, you're thinking. Introverts feel by thinking. I feel you by thinking. I have to think about this thing. What is this thing? And once you have that impression of this thing, that's what it is. That's the unwavering thing, what it is, and that's exactly what Martin Luther was arguing for. The other guy. So now we're going to extrovert land, which is me. The extrovert thinkers are the complete opposite, but their work complements each other. The extrovert objects are arbitrary to extroverts. I don't care what this thing is. I just need it for something. Can you do the job? Extroverts are good leaders. They're good entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have to delegate tasks. I'm not romantic about who is cleaning the damn car. I'm not romantic about
you're removing emotion from the equation. You're looking at it objectively.
About who's ringing me up, and I just need somebody just do this. Like that's what the extrovert is. And this other person, this kind of floats towards you. Once you play these out, extreme extroversion is like that hippies are those people who are just in la la land. They think that everything you abstract so far that you just it's narcissism. It's just that endless. Well, there has to be something higher. What's higher than evil? What's higher than good? Paul Tillich talked about. He's another German intellectual. He talks about the God above God, like just loony shit. Like you get into this just until nothing exists.
I'm guilty of going to that place because it is so. I was just talking about it. It is so fucking awe-inspiring. There is so much unexplained. It's like you can't live in that headspace too long. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly what Nietzsche said. Nietzsche, when his book Will to Power, Nietzsche said when he was critiquing this growing nihilism in Germany, he said that everything in culture was going from God is good. So basically, things are God is good. There's a harmony here. Things make sense. To a fanatical faith, all is false. An act of Buddhism. Those were his words. Buddhism, that Eastern way of thinking, that higher transcendent thing that was really starting to emerge. So people go from that God is good, being grounded in this harmonious relationship between objects and subjects, and what the extrovert will do is they'll go to a fanatical faith, which is all is false. So
right.
that's basically what they're not saying. That's what you're saying. But sometimes when you go too
Well, no,
abstract, you say,
it's funny because when I go to that place, and I've done stuff in the past, that helps you get to those spots. But
this is not real.
no, but what I
That's
mean is when I go to that place of awe of holy shit, we're in this infinite, inexplicable universe, right? To
yeah,
me, it's not going toward the nihilistic. It's the opposite. To me, it makes things feel more meaningful because I go, holy shit. It gives me more appreciation. It gives me more perspective. Like, because people really will just kind of go through the day and never ponder those things. They'll never ponder the fact that we're spinning around on this rock in an endless universe, and they just
yeah,
go like, hey, what's on TV? What am I getting to eat? Like, they don't even. And when I think about it, I don't start to feel like, oh, life's meaningless. I start to think, oh, life's probably way more meaningful than we have any concept of, because I go, none of this would exist unless it was the most meaningful, special, unique, just to
right,
be alive, just to have consciousness in this place. So I get the opposite effect from it when I get in my hippie mode. I,
yeah,
I don't get nihilistic. I get
yeah.
appreciative.
The religious mind is extroverted because you said it perfectly.
Well, I'm not religious by any stretch, but
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm using that. I'm using it in like in,
spiritual, listen, I'm not going to pretend to be Mr. Jew. I know a couple prayers,
yeah, because they're not because worldly. This is what the idea of not being worldly, because worldly people they worship objects. Worldly people are introverted are cognitively introverted. They worship objects. Well, I got to get those next Yeezys. Yeezys.
Right, right.
You and I see cloth made in Taiwan. The introverted person, the person who worships objects, they see God's creation.
Well, just like you, the objects I really love and want or will splurge on or whatever, am I going to get enjoyment out of this thing? Like, is it going to give me, I don't care if anyone sees it, right?
Yeah,
I don't think in fact, I know I've never bought anything as a status symbol. I've never bought one object thinking, I can't wait for people to see this. I
yeah,
always go, how much am I going to enjoy it? Will I like it? Is it going to
yeah.
give me the use that I need? And if that's
That's
the case,
yep.
someone might look at it like it's a fancy, shiny thing about it, but it's like, hey, I just wanted the thing that's going to work the best because I love
Yeah,
doing this thing and I want it to work really well and get the most use out of it.
that's really pragmatic, and you can see like it's important that this is why Jung did this so geniusly, because you kind of have to show where these two modes of thinking, like you have to kind of show their extremes. Like imagine if you try to make yourself more as introverted as possible. Like what would that look like? You essentially look at how you can it's a narcissistic ego driven world. I'm looking at everything as, what am I getting out of this? Like,
Right.
how can that thing work for me? Well, that's the same thing a tyrannical dictator does. How can this thing work for me? Well, you're not really you. You're kind of just like you're actors in my world, basically. That's the telos of that. The extrovert thinking is the complete opposite. That's that, like, nothing exists. This is all
Right.
just fake. You might as well just die. I mean,
Listen, I think a lot of people, I do go through stages of kind of, you meandered on move. I'll say this. Here's how I'm introverted. It's kind of a way I've heard it described before too, or why I've always kind of felt that I was, which is, and it's more than just like the ability to be alone. Like I've always been able to be alone for long periods of time.
that's
But,
great.
well, what I find in people and in myself, I've heard it described this way. It's like, an introverted person, people either have an internal dialogue going with themselves or they don't. A lot of people don't have, like, I always have John's voice in my head. I talk to myself all day. I have really crazy conversations with myself. Not in a bad way, but there's a dialogue there.
I get it.
Right. So those are the people that can do alone because they're having that dialogue. They're reading something interesting. They saw something interesting or what have you, and they're sitting there and they're processing it. And it's like, it may just look like you're chilling sitting there, but you're actually having like this stimulating, meaningful conversation with yourself. And a lot of people seem to need the external human for the fuel, for the stimulus themselves. I know people like that. If they don't have someone else with them, if they're alone for even a few minutes, they got to be on the phone. They got to be texting somebody. They have to have, it's the other person's energy that fuels them. But I think we're born as either the internal dialogue guy or we need the external dialogue. And I've always kind of grouped people introvert, extrovert that way. But I like the way you kind of separated out the cognitive introvert, extrovert.
That was all young. All like people need to know that because
it's an interesting distinction. Because like you said, you can go all the way toward narcissism with that, where this is all about me.
And on the flip side, nothing is real and this is all just fake.
Right. And then most of us probably fall somewhere in between there, right? But yeah, I can listen. I'll put on a song that I love or something, and I'll really just sit like the guy staring at the painting for an hour. I'll do that with a song, and I'll think about the lyrics and all these different meanings and things. But I do that because intrinsically I enjoy it. I get some sort of satisfaction from that. And it's like I'm going through this weird little journey in my head, and I feel like I just had. Whereas if I even tried to have that convo with someone else, I would just kind of get frustrated by it, or like it's too herky jerky.
And that's useful because that means you really think about. You're really calm, collected guy. You're calculated. You don't talk about stuff that you have no clue about. So once you start saying something, it's like, I have a good feeling that you thought a while. And sometimes, in a conversation, when you're really trying to, not just tell like a broken record, you're trying to explore and maybe come up with new ideas. But I would say generally, you think things through and you're careful about your words. And I think what a plus with doing that is you're grounded. You're not easily. No one's gonna be able to bullshit you easily.
No.
If someone who is extroverted and charismatic and they're showing you all these other things like, oh, well, did you think about it this way? Like, doesn't matter because
the couple times that I've been bullshitted or fucking bamboozled in my life stick with me so hard.
Yeah.
Because I do pride myself on not falling prey to any of that stuff. So if it happens, I'm like, damn, I can't believe.
This is probably one of the bad things. I can be convinced like easily because I'm so interested. I want to know like, well, why do you think that way? I'm so open to want to know why you think this way that I'm extroverted, so I can get lost. I'm always prone to going towards this hippie Gnostic world where nothing exists, and like you said, like the end of that is like, oh damn, well maybe none of this really exists. Like that's the end of it. You want to avoid that at all costs.
No, I do always, especially lately, and it's something I've been preaching about, I do always come back to the fact that human relations and connection, whether you want to call it love or whatever, that really is the most important stuff, right? Yep. So as introverted, as much as I do want to be alone or with my own thoughts or whatever, there is always a point where it loses all its meaning unless you do have other people to share that stuff with.
That's what Nietzsche was talking about when he said God was dead, because he said that we killed that figure that stood on top of everything. We killed him. So once you remove God, well, something has to take its place. What's going to take its place? You're just going to keep going higher and higher and higher until 6 million people are burning somewhere in some country. Like it's so fascinating to think about it in terms like that, because it's like our minds are, and it's just really cool to think about how powerful our minds are. It's like we can literally we have the ability to construct. I mean,
everything on this planet.
yeah, like we did it all. Like name it, we did it.
Well, and it all, like you said, it came from everything other than, you know, nature, trees, whatever. Everything here started in somebody's mind, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's this computer I'm looking at, this cup I'm drinking out of, that camera, that light bulb, that table, you know, somebody sat and thought, hey, how can I build this thing that will serve this purpose? And then they manifested it into reality, and now it's here forever. Who made the first table? You know what I mean? Who decided to cut a tree and put legs on it, and so you could place things on the surface? Like, somebody first thought of that. All that, I always say how strange it is. See, again, but when I go down these weird rabbit holes, it makes me more appreciative. Whenever I go, life's so strange. It really is so precious and weird and strange, and consciousness is the weirdest thing ever. The fact me and you can even have this conversation, absorb what each other are saying, like, people are not as in awe of it as they should be, in my opinion. Just in awe of the fact that I'm alive. They say you have like a 1 in 400 trillion chance or whatever of even being alive.
I think it's like 400 trillion to 1, I think.
Right. So that plus all the advantages we have today, living in modern to even be able to do this stuff. You know, we're one of the luckiest of anyone in human history. We've got it easier than everybody.
Yeah, that's what I think is cool, because we're talking about that nihilism stands right at the door. That was Nietzsche's exact words. You said that, so you can have these facts. Well, existing is 400 trillion to 1, and you said that encourages you. That makes you want to appreciate it. When you think about it, it's like, well, this is just human nature. That makes you appreciate. That gives you a more enlightened viewpoint of what's really going on. You can see what's really going on. But can you just imagine how south that can go? It's like, oh, well, the possibility of living with 400 to 1, well, I might as well not even try.
Right. Or you're right. Well, but sometimes I do think we should all just be hippies in a field somewhere, you know?
Yeah. Like, why do you think from that fact that life is pretty much impossible, why do you think you're oriented to take that and use that as a good? Like, why do you think?
Because I feel so fortunate when I think about it. I feel appreciative. I go, holy shit, I am one of, and again, to even take the 1 in 400 trillion, but then to go, I'm alive today in modern society, where I even have the luxury of sitting here and pondering these things, because I'm not out there trying to kill an animal, fighting for my life, live until I'm 30 years old, average age, whatever. Like, we really have it so great. I go, the fact that it's inexplicable to me makes it even more precious, because I go, I don't know what it means, therefore it means everything. You know, like, it's so wondrous and so inexplicable that, and then it's gone. And like we were talking about, every single thing that we see and use, and it's only here because of other people that have existed before us. That always kind of trips my mind out. I go, like, it's all been put here by people that were here before. However, 99.9% of people will never be known or remembered. You know, do you know your great-great-grandfather? Because I don't, and I don't know what he looked like. I don't know what he sounded like. I know nothing about him. And for most people, unless you were famous or you really left something, I think that might change with tech. So, like, maybe my great-great-great-grandson, God willing, would go like, hey, you know, show me my great-great-grandpa's old Twitter, you know, or podcast. Like, there's, you know, archival people that'll be able to pull that up, like how we do Ancestry now. But they'll be like, here was your great-granddad's Facebook page.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's like, people are here. They spend their whole life. They could be grinding 12 hours a day, working for some, you know, financial firm, feeling so meaningful and empowered and passionate and doing all these things. But yeah, then at the end of the day, they die. What did it mean? What did most of the stuff they were doing with their day mean? And you almost look at that hippie in the field, you go, he's got it right. He's not putting all these limitations on himself. He's singing and he's dancing and he's in touch with the earth, and he's having lots of sex and eating, you know what I mean? Like, he's going to look back in his life and go, I had all these meaningful relationships and love and experiences and great music and drugs. It's like, no one's looking back going, I'm glad I was hammering out Excel spreadsheets all night, right? I touched on a lot of different points there, but...
Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, that made a lot of sense, because that extroverted person they're very prone to I would say hedonistic lifestyles because they focus about their relationship between the subjects and objects. So I don't have a romantic view about cocaine. Like to an extrovert, to an extremely extroverted person, it's like, well, it's just cocaine, just do it when I like. You don't have a more conservative introverted person would say no, cocaine bad. Like they would have that kind of like that no wavering. And I was hearing you say like this is going back to the beginning of the conversation about this knowledge of good and evil, because it's like just looking at these facts, like you laid out, you were making such a nihilistic argument. I don't think you were even aware of it. You were saying like people just work their whole life.
No, I've been accused of it before. Right. I sound like the Unabomber. I'm well aware.
This is the cool thing about it. You sound so hopeless and just so just depressing. But the thing is, what you said is about the intent. You're not stretching out the finitude of life so you can shit on it. Like you're not expressing the trivial nature of people's lives so you can then say, so you might as well just give it up.
I'm praising it. I'm praising the
agapic love for life, and that's exactly why Adam and Eve couldn't know that knowledge before they had that agapic love. That's exactly what the point was. Because if you look at it from that viewpoint, with the intent, without the intent of the love for it, it's going to be by definition, it's going to be trivial. Well, look at this thing that nobody can do, that no one's going to remember me for, that I basically have zero shot in. Why try?
You know what it is though, Kyle? It's that I've been looking at everything lately, and my life's changed a lot over the last few years too. I'm in my 40s now. You do start to.
Really?
I'm 43. Yeah, 43 years old. Yes, sir.
You look like you're like 25.
Get out of here. You see me in person. You see my crow's feet. But thank you. I appreciate that. I have started looking at everything differently, more existentially, meaning of life. What does it all mean?
Very cosmic, what you're doing.
Well, and I've gone through stuff too. It's easy to kind of sit stagnantly, kind of numbed out for long periods of time, for me anyway. And then time goes by and you're like, holy shit, here's how I've been viewing it all is at the end of my life, what am I going to look back on as having been meaningful? Right? I'm all about like meaning and even purpose now. So it's like most of the stuff I would look back on and not even remember it. It would be so meaningless to the point that I don't even recall it. And that includes 90% of the shit I do with my day. And not to say you shouldn't do things to be healthy and you have to support your family and all that type of stuff. So that's different. I'm not saying, just go lay in a field and smoke peyote all day. But yeah, I want to be able to look back on stuff and say, I'm glad I spent my time and energy on that. And so, lately, if I do find myself spending time, energy, even mental and emotional energy. That's such a big one. People don't realize when you do have time to yourself and you're sitting up, the stuff you're ruminating on I can speak for me personally, but I know other people do it. The stuff you're just thinking over and over, whether it's past regrets, whether it's, future worries about stuff, you're just wasting that energy, that time, that you're expending it all for nothing. You're gaining nothing from it. And I want to be able to look back and go, hey, I'm so glad that I gave my energy to this, or I gave my time to that, and then still sit back and watch a Netflix series whenever I want.
John, man, you're an amazing guy. I think
I gotta have you back on. I feel like we can talk about so much more stuff.
Yeah, that was a good ending.
All right, before we go, Kyle, please tell people where to find you. Instagram, Twitter. How do they find you? Where do you want to, anywhere else you want to point people? YouTube?
Kendricks, KHENDR, 2 I's and an X on every platform. I think except for YouTube. I'm just Kyle J. Maxwell on YouTube. But Kendricks and everything else, man. John, thank you for having me. That was an intriguing conversation.
Thank you, man. No, really, it was my pleasure. Definitely going to do it again. K Hendricks, 2 I's, all platforms. Kyle J. Maxwell, and that's it. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope everybody else is having a great week, and I will be back legit just a couple days with some more great interviews, and we for sure got to get Kyle back too. And thank you all for tuning in. And have a great weekend. And I will see y'all soon. Thank you so much.